You didn't even scan our tickets, Malcolm said, his voice calm but unshakable. Cheryl's smile faltered as the gate phone rang behind her, loud, urgent, and very much for her. Seconds later, the boarding line froze, the terminal fell silent, and 2 corporate officers appeared at the gate, walking straight toward the mistake she thought no one would notice. At 7:04 a.m., the terminal at JFK International buzzed with its usual early morning rhythm, baristas calling out espresso orders, suitcase wheels clicking over tile, gate announcements echoing every few minutes. But at Gate 12A, something quieter was happening, something nearly imperceptible at first. A family approached the first-class lane, dressed with the kind of poise and polish that said they had every right to be there. Malcolm Rivers walked a half-step ahead, wearing a deep charcoal wool coat that framed his posture, tall, composed, deliberate. His wife, Nia, moved beside him, wrapped in a sand-colored shawl, holding their daughter Maya's hand gently as the little girl clutched a gold-trimmed gift bag. Jordan, 17, walked just behind them, alert but silent, his dark blazer crisp, his expression unreadable. They weren't in a hurry. They didn't need to be. Their boarding passes, tucked neatly inside Malcolm's leather folio, had them seated in 1A through 1D. And the gift bag, tied with ribbon, carried something simple but sacred, a birthday pendant for Malcolm's mother, waiting for them in San Francisco. But when they stepped up to the counter, the gate agent didn't even glance at the boarding passes. Cheryl Dawes had been working this airline for almost 10 years. Her posture behind the desk was practiced, shoulders squared, smile controlled, every motion efficient. She had scanned in a dozen passengers already, barely glancing up from the handheld reader. But the moment the Rivers family approached, her smile faltered, not visibly, not overtly, just slightly, like a door that didn't close all the way. "Economy boarding is down at gate 14, she said without looking up. Malcolm's hand paused as he extended the passes. "We're flying first class," he said, his voice even and calm. Cheryl looked up now, her eyes passing over each of them with the precision of a customs officer checking documents. She didn't take the folio. She didn't scan a thing. Instead, she gave a thin smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sure that's what the tickets say," she replied smoothly, "but we're currently prioritizing elite boarders." Nia tilted her head slightly. "We are elite members. Would you like to see the status?" Cheryl's fingers tapped her tablet screen without purpose. "There's probably been a mix-up," she said. "You'll need to wait until I've cleared the confirmed list." She turned back to the passenger line as if they weren't standing there. Malcolm didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He simply opened the folio and held it steady. "You haven't scanned anything," he said plainly. "Please scan our boarding passes." Cheryl sighed, reaching for the top one with visible reluctance. She scanned it. The reader chirped green. Then another. Green again. Her lips tightened. "The system sometimes glitches," she muttered, avoiding eye contact. "Please step aside while I confirm with the manifest." Around them, the line began to fidget. A man in a golf vest pretended to scroll his phone but didn't blink. 2 young women whispered behind their hands. Maya looked up at her mother. "Why can't we go in?" she asked quietly. Nia crouched beside her, brushing back a curl from her daughter's forehead. "It's okay, sweetheart," she whispered. "Just hold on to the gift. We'll be on soon." Jordan shifted slightly, his shoulders tense, but he didn't speak. Malcolm remained still, spine straight, voice even. "We're not stepping aside. You scanned the passes. They're valid." Cheryl looked up sharply. "Sir, I'm asking you to move so I can complete boarding." "And I'm telling you," Malcolm replied calmly, "you're refusing us without reason." The air began to change. Eyes in the line locked in. A man cleared his throat but didn't look away. A teenager near the kiosk started filming, subtly angling his phone. Cheryl leaned in, voice low but tight. "Sir, if you escalate this, you won't be getting on at all." Malcolm didn't blink. He stepped back half a pace, took out his phone, and dialed. Yes, he said quietly. Gate 12A. Boarding refusal despite verified passes. All 4 scanned valid. No stated reason. Please advise. Cheryl scoffed loud enough for bystanders to hear. Of course. Always a phone call. She rolled her eyes and turned her back. Seconds passed. Then the gate desk phone rang. A junior agent, nervously shifting behind Cheryl, picked it up. Yes, sir. Understood. He hung up, face pale, and approached her. You need to stop boarding, he said under his breath. What? Cheryl snapped. Supervisors on their way. Flights on hold. The boarding line froze. The usual hum of airport activity seemed to mute. The Rivers family didn't speak. They didn't protest. They simply waited. The silence stretched long, thick with recognition. Something was happening. Something no one around them could quite name, but everyone felt. Then, from the jet bridge corridor, 2 men appeared. One in a tailored navy blazer, the other in a regulation red-striped operations jacket. Cheryl's spine straightened as they approached. Cliff, she began, recognizing the blazer. Cliff Marks, Senior Regional Ops. We have a step away from the desk, Cliff said flatly. She blinked. There's a mistake. They're claiming first class, but did you scan their passes? He asked. Her silence answered for her. 2 of them, she admitted. Both read valid. The man in the red-striped jacket, Operations Chief Ronnie Hall, cut in. That's all we need to hear. Cliff turned toward the Rivers family. Mr. and Mrs. Rivers, Jordan, Maya, your seats are confirmed. Please proceed. Cheryl's jaw tightened. But you thought wrong, Cliff said, without looking at her. He tapped the manifest on the tablet and stepped back. Let them through. Paul, the junior agent, nodded quickly and motioned them forward. The Rivers family moved silently, gracefully, passing Cheryl without a glance. But the air around her pulsed with the weight of what had just occurred. No shouting. No confrontation. Just 4 passengers standing where they were supposed to stand. And a gate agent realizing, perhaps for the first time, that she had underestimated the wrong people. As they disappeared down the jet bridge, Cheryl stood frozen, her station suddenly feeling like a spotlight. Passengers whispered. Phones recorded. And somewhere, beyond the hum of the airport, a wheel had turned, and it wouldn't stop spinning anytime soon. The cabin doors shut with a soft mechanical hiss, and the click of the final seal echoed like a closing verdict. Passengers were still murmuring as they settled in, but those who had witnessed the quiet standoff at Gate 12A sat a little stiffer in their seats, exchanging glances that said more than words ever could. In the front of the aircraft, Malcolm Rivers and his family took their places without fanfare, row 1A through 1D. Jordan adjusted his cufflinks as he slid into his seat. Maya sat beside her mother, still clutching the gold gift bag with wide, curious eyes. Nia placed a hand gently on her daughter's shoulder as the flight attendants moved through the cabin with routine motions. But nothing felt routine. Not anymore. Behind the curtain separating first class from the rest of the plane, Cheryl Dawes sat in the fold-down crew jump seat, staring straight ahead. Her shoulders were tense, lips pressed so tightly they were losing color. The same passengers who had watched her confidence just an hour earlier now whispered past her presence like it was a caution sign. She didn't look at anyone. She didn't have to. She could feel the change. At the front of the cabin, Aaron Caldwell, a senior flight attendant with 15 years of service, paused beside the galley. She glanced toward the Rivers family, then to her tablet where a new message blinked. 5 words. Expect contact from executive office. Her brows drew together. She had seen messages from ops before, delays, crew adjustments, occasional misconduct flags. But never this. Never 5 words with that much weight. She looked up again at Malcolm Rivers. He sat quietly, legs crossed, one hand resting on the armrest, the other on his knee, still. Deliberate. a presence that didn't fill the space but defined it. Erin walked back toward the galley where the rest of the crew prepared the beverage carts, and she lowered her voice. "He's not just another passenger," she said to Ben, the junior flight attendant on his third week. "That man's someone high-level." Ben blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she whispered, "corporate pinged the flight deck. I've never seen it happen like this." Ben glanced toward the front, eyes widening slightly. "He doesn't look mad." "He doesn't have to," Erin replied. "That's what makes it worse." Meanwhile, Cheryl sat alone, now a ghost in the airline she used to own, with her posture, her tone, her gate presence. The seatbelt around her waist wasn't uncomfortable, but the air around her was suffocating. She stared at the tray table in front of her, pretending it held answers, but all she could hear was the echo of that phone call. One call. One sentence. And now the entire operation had shifted beneath her feet. She didn't know who had picked up that call, but she knew it went above her pay grade. Above Cliff. Maybe above regional ops altogether. She had made assumptions, sure. But not worse than anyone else. Right? Still, here she was, seatbelted like a trainee on her first ride-along, while the family she dismissed sat in first class as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something had broken, and it was getting louder, even in the silence. The fasten seatbelt sign dinged off, and the hum of the engine softened to cruising levels. Erin made her rounds through first class, offering drinks with a polished smile. She paused at row 1A, where Nia Rivers looked up and offered a polite nod. "Anything I can get for you or your daughter?" Erin asked, voice warm but steady. "We're okay for now," Nia replied gently. "Thank you." Erin turned to Malcolm. "Mr. Rivers?" Malcolm met her gaze calmly. "We're good. Thank you." She nodded and moved on, her pulse quicker than before. She could feel something in his eyes. Not anger. Not arrogance. Just precision. Like a chess player mid-match who already knows the last move. Behind the curtain, Cheryl could feel the shift too. She wasn't stupid. She had been in crew briefings where the phrase "protected individuals" came up, passengers flagged for priority due to corporate ties, government affiliations, and investor relations. She just never expected one to show up in her line wearing a wool coat and handing over tickets without theatrics. It wasn't fair. No one told her. No one warned her. But wasn't that the point? You're not supposed to treat people right because they're powerful. You're supposed to treat them right because it's your job. She looked down at her hands. They weren't shaking. Not yet. But she could feel the tremor waiting. Erin returned to the galley and tapped her tablet again. A new message. Flight crew to be retained on aircraft post-landing. Internal affairs en route. Submit full cabin report. She froze. Retained? Internal affairs? This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was something big. Something official. Cheryl noticed Erin's sudden pause. "Everything all right?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Erin hesitated. "Just routine updates," she lied. Cheryl nodded, but her gut clenched. She had never heard of IA getting involved mid-flight unless it was criminal. What had she triggered? In first class, Jordan finally leaned slightly toward his father. "Do you think she realizes what's happening?" he asked quietly. Malcolm looked forward, unfazed. "She doesn't need to realize. It's already in motion." Jordan nodded and returned to his book, though he hadn't turned the page in 10 minutes. Erin continued through the cabin, but now every interaction felt heavier. The passengers weren't just sipping wine and requesting blankets. They were watching. Listening. Waiting. Some of them had seen the confrontation. Others had heard whispers. But they all knew one thing: something was unfolding midair, and no one had raised their voice to make it happen. Even Ben felt it. As he offered a beverage to a woman in 2D, he whispered, "Do you think corporate will be at the gate?" Aaron gave a tight nod. They'll be waiting. Cheryl sat straighter now. Her crew earpiece buzzed, but no one called her name. She wasn't being asked to help. She wasn't being invited into the loop. She was being iced out. Erased in real time. She turned toward the curtain again, tempted to peek into first class, to see the family she had tried to wave away as if they were a mistake. But she didn't move. She couldn't. That would mean facing them. That would mean acknowledging that her power, the thing she wielded so easily at the gate, had never been real. It was borrowed. And now it was gone. At the front, Malcolm Rivers leaned back in his seat, eyes closed but not asleep. The hum of the plane didn't touch him. He had done what needed to be done. The rest would unfold with or without him. He didn't need revenge. He needed accountability. And he knew the difference. Nia glanced at him and offered a soft smile. Across the aisle, Maya had finally dozed off, the gold gift bag resting in her lap. Jordan, half turned in his seat, watched the curtain separating the cabin like it was a wall between two worlds. And in many ways, it was. The first-class crew moved with precision now, quieter, more deliberate. Even passengers who had no idea who the family was adjusted their tone. Respect wasn't demanded. It had been earned without a word. Aaron passed row 1A1 last time and paused. If you need anything before we begin descent, just let me know. Malcolm opened his eyes. You've already done enough. Thank you. Aaron offered a nod, and this time, it felt like more than service. It felt like respect. Back in her jump seat, Cheryl closed her eyes. She knew what was coming. She didn't need to hear it said. The moment the wheels touched the tarmac, it wouldn't just be the end of the flight. It would be the beginning of her fall. And she knew, deep in her gut, that no amount of explanation would matter now. Because the only voice that had spoken had already said everything without raising its volume. And the rest of the plane had listened. The seatbelt light flicked on with a soft ding, followed by the captain's calm voice over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our initial descent into San Francisco. Please ensure all seatbacks are upright and tray tables are stowed. Passengers shifted in their seats, stashing away magazines and unplugging earbuds, but the atmosphere remained hushed, unusually so for the final stretch of a cross-country flight. In row 1A, Malcolm Rivers hadn't moved. His hands rested calmly in his lap, his gaze steady out the window as the clouds gave way to cityscape below. Nia adjusted Maya's jacket as their daughter stirred, blinking awake with a soft yawn. Jordan closed his book slowly, setting it aside with the same quiet dignity that had followed him from the gate. In the rear of the aircraft, Cheryl Dawes sat frozen in the crew jump seat, her jaw tight, fingers laced so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Every second felt like a countdown. Every whisper among crew members passed through her like wind in a hollow house. She heard nothing clearly, but felt everything. She knew what was coming, not because anyone had said it, but because no one had to. The silence had spoken. Aaron Caldwell moved down the aisle with a final round of checks, her demeanor calm but observant. When she reached the front of the plane, her tablet buzzed. Another message. This one short, unmistakable, meet ground team at arrival gate. Passenger, Rivers. Action required. She tapped the screen to acknowledge receipt and glanced at Malcolm. He hadn't turned his head, hadn't said a word since the incident. But something about the way he sat, perfectly still, made her pulse quicken. She'd served VIPs before, athletes, politicians, tech execs, but none had his presence. He wasn't performing power. He embodied it. As the wheels kissed the runway, there was no applause. Just the gentle groan of brakes and the shifting tension of passengers preparing to stand. Malcolm leaned forward only to retrieve his coat. Maya reached for the gift bag, and Nia smoothed down her daughter's hair one last time. Jordan exhaled quietly. From the cockpit, Captain Dale Roberts gave his final announcement, thanking passengers, advising them to remain seated until the seatbelt sign was off. As the aircraft coasted toward the gate, Cheryl's earpiece crackled to life. Dana Shaw and Marcus Elwood are waiting at the jet bridge, came the captain's clipped voice. They'll escort Cheryl upon deplaning. No sympathy. No elaboration. Just procedure. Cheryl's stomach churned. Her tongue felt dry. She watched through the narrow crack of the curtain as the plane eased into position and the jet bridge connected with a mechanical hiss. The front cabin door opened with a sharp click, and two figures stepped in, Dana Shaw, Corporate Affairs, tall and clean-lined in a gray pantsuit, and Marcus Elwood, HR, carrying a black folio and a flat expression. Aaron stepped aside as they entered. Dana's voice was professional, unflinching. "Ms. Dawes, please gather your belongings and follow us." Cheryl didn't speak. She rose, slow and robotic, and stepped into the aisle, her uniform suddenly feeling like a costume 2 sizes too small. She didn't look left or right as she passed the first-class passengers, though she could feel their eyes on her. Some curious. Some indifferent. A few filled with a recognition that cut deeper than judgment, disappointment. When she reached row 1, she looked up, just briefly, and met Malcolm's eyes. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. There was no triumph in his gaze, no satisfaction, no scorn. Just silence. Like he'd already moved on from her long before this moment arrived. Nia looked at Cheryl with calm, unreadable grace. Jordan gave a barely perceptible shake of his head. Maya clutched her gift bag and watched her mother's hand instead. Cheryl moved on. Behind her, whispers followed. Phones hovered just low enough not to be obvious but pointed just high enough to capture everything. As she stepped off the aircraft, the brightness of the terminal lights hit her like a spotlight. The jet bridge that once felt like the gateway to command now felt like a corridor of consequence. Dana led the way, her heels tapping in sharp rhythm, Marcus beside her in silence. They didn't touch Cheryl. They didn't have to. The walk alone was enough. Every step stripped more away. At the end of the corridor, they veered left into an access hallway marked Authorized Personnel Only. Beyond that, a frosted glass door with a keypad. Marcus entered the code. The door clicked open. They stepped into a small conference room, neutral-toned walls, 2 chairs, a table, a stack of documents already waiting. "Please sit," Dana said. Cheryl obeyed. Marcus took the seat across from her and opened the folio. "Ms. Dawes," he began, "you are being formally placed on administrative removal pending termination. Based on the initial gate incident, reviewed footage, and internal statements, your conduct has violated multiple procedural and behavioral standards." Cheryl opened her mouth. "It wasn't personal." "I didn't know who he was, that's not the point," Dana interrupted calmly. "It's not about who he was. It's about what you did." Marcus slid a paper forward. "You never scanned their tickets. You assumed they didn't belong." "I was trying to enforce order," Cheryl's voice cracked. The line was backed up. "I was under pressure." "I've seen mistakes before, This isn't your first flag," Marcus replied. "There have been previous complaints. Staff concerns. Informal coaching moments logged over the years." Cheryl stared at the paper. The words conduct violation, level red seemed to glare back at her. "I didn't mean harm," she whispered. Dana didn't respond right away. She leaned forward, hands clasped. "Intent doesn't outweigh impact," she said. "You didn't just mishandle a boarding. You revealed a bias that puts this company at risk. You made a decision without verification. And unfortunately, the person you targeted wasn't just a passenger. He's a primary shareholder. The optics are now global." Cheryl's breath caught. "They're going public with this?" "They don't have to," Marcus said. "Someone already did. Footage is circulating. Commentary is escalating. And in every frame, your actions speak louder than your excuses." Cheryl sat back, eyes blurred. "So that's it? One mistake and I'm out?" Dana met her gaze directly. "It wasn't one mistake. It was the moment that revealed the pattern. They handed her a termination packet, instructions for returning her badge, a list of next steps she barely read. She signed. There was no fight left. As she left the room, escorted by a different set of silent faces, the terminal noise returned in a rush. Announcements overhead. Rolling bags. Coffee orders. Life moved on. But Cheryl didn't. She drifted toward the employee exit, her badge already deactivated. Outside, in the parking structure, her car sat just where she left it, but everything else had moved. She got in, shut the door, and stared ahead. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. The headline read, "Tech executive calmly reverses gate discrimination with one call." She clicked on the article. There was a still photo, Malcolm Rivers standing at the gate, poised, composed. Another clip showed Cheryl mid-sentence, eyes hard, lips tight. Then a pause. A phone call. And silence. She scrolled to the comments. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just made a call. Power doesn't need volume. Dignity looks like this. Cheryl closed the app and set the phone aside. For a long moment, she stared at her own reflection in the windshield. The same face. The same uniform. But nothing about it felt the same. She thought back to the gate. To the moment she made a call without even picking up a phone. The moment she made a decision and let her assumption speak louder than truth. And the man she dismissed? He never raised his voice. He never needed to. Because the system listened when silence carried the right name. And now, the whole world was listening too. In writing the story of the Rivers family and their experience at Gate 12A, I didn't want to create a tale of rage or revenge. I wanted to show what real dignity looks like in the face of injustice. Malcolm Rivers never raised his voice. He didn't insult, threaten, or make a scene. He made one calm phone call. And in that single act, he showed us a lesson far louder than any argument ever could. True power doesn't need to shout to be heard. The story isn't just about one gate agent making a mistake. It's about the quiet, often invisible biases that follow people through airports, workplaces, classrooms, and everyday interactions. Cheryl Dawes didn't scream or curse, she simply assumed. She looked at a well-dressed black family holding first-class tickets and decided they didn't belong. That assumption wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. Because assumption, when given authority, becomes discrimination. And when that happens behind a uniform or policy, the harm cuts deeper and spreads wider. If there's one lesson I hope you take away from this story, it's this: treat every person with dignity, not because they might hold power, but because they deserve it. You never know who someone truly is. But more importantly, you don't need to. Kindness, respect, and fairness should never be conditional on status. They should be our default. To those of you listening, especially those who have ever been underestimated, profiled, or treated like they didn't belong, your calm, your presence, and your silence in the face of judgment is not weakness, it is strength. People notice. The world is watching. And as this story shows, sometimes the most powerful change comes not from what we say, but from how we choose to stand. To every gate agent, cashier, officer, teacher, and leader, those of you in roles of service and control, check your assumptions before you exercise your authority. One moment of unconscious bias can unravel a career, damage a reputation, and leave a wound in someone else's memory that lasts a lifetime. On behalf of U.S. Heartwarming Story, thank you for joining us on this powerful journey. If this story moved you or made you think twice, please consider sharing it. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell icon, and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Your voice matters, your stories matter, and we'll keep telling them, one moment of justice at a time.